Hello and welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital right here on Trust Television. My name is Ayuba Ilya. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Of course, as always, I'm not alone in the studio.
Good morning, Ayuba, and it's always a delight to be here. Good morning, Nigerians, and thank you for joining us. My name is Stella Iyaji.
Yes, we take a look at the headlines first thing today. Court grants DSS permission to hold Mamu for 60 more days.
2023, Atiku promised to lead Nigeria out of darkness.
Anthony Joshua agrees to fight Fury in December.
Now let's take a look at the details. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has vowed to lead Nigeria out of darkness if elected in 2023. Atiku said this while presenting his economic blueprint for Nigeria at the Private Sector Economic Forum on the 2023 presidential election organized by the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He also advised Nigerians not to allow political slogans to take the place of developmental plans, stressing that political propaganda on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is never a substitute for proper social, economic, and political agenda. While rolling out his plans, Atiku lamented that Nigeria's economy is crawling rather than growing. According to him, Nigeria is being dressed in borrowed robes. He said Nigeria under the APC-led government has consistently run on budget deficits since 2015.
A federal high court in Abuja has given the Department of State Services the go-ahead to detain Tukur Mamu, the Kaduna train attack negotiator, for 60 more days. According to Nan Nkenye Maha, the presiding judge, issued the ruling on Tuesday in response to an ex parte motion moved by Ahmed Magaji, counsel for the DSS. In the motion dated September 12, the DSS urged the court to grant its request to enable it to conclude the investigation on Mamu. Mamu, an aide to Ahmad Gumi, a popular Islamic cleric, has been involved in negotiations for the release of persons abducted during an attack on a train in Kaduna in March 2022. Commenting on his arrest, Gumi had said that detaining Mamu is an act of terrorism and that the DSS should either charge him to court or release him. Reacting in a statement on Sunday, Peter Funaya, DSS spokesperson, said that the security agency will not be distracted by skewed utterances. He described the outcome of the agency's investigation on Mamu as mind-boggling.
Now, Anthony Joshua has accepted to fight current world heavyweight champion Tyson Fury in Cardiff on December 3rd, 2022. After Joshua's loss in Saudi Arabia last month, Fury had challenged him to a fight. In a statement, Joshua's management announced that 258 and Matchroom Boxing can confirm on behalf of Anthony Joshua that we accepted all terms presented by Fury for a fight on December 3rd. Due to the Queen's passing, it was agreed to halt all communications. We are awaiting response, the statement said. In reaction to the statement, Fury's promoter, Frank Warren, tweeted, "Contract will be with you very soon." Joshua is said to earn £75 million from the fight at the Principality Stadium in the Welsh capital city, following Fury's 40% offer to him from the fight purse. Fury had planned a fight against Usyk in December, but the Ukrainian declined, which made Fury turn his attention to Joshua.
All right, so let's take a look at some packages we have for you this morning. The Court of Appeal in Abuja had reserved judgment on an appeal filed by the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, seeking to squash the terrorism and treasonable felony charge the federal government preferred against him. The IPOB leader, who is currently facing trial before the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja, had approached the Court of Appeal to query the legal competence of the charge pending against him. Let's take a look.
Arguing the appeal claim before a three-man panel led by Justice Hannatu Jummai Sankey, Ozokamo alleged that his client was forcefully abducted from Kenya and illegally renditioned back to the country.
But instead of the lower court striking out the entire 50-count charge and allowing Nnamdi Kanu to to go home a free man after the long walk, like Nelson Mandela, long walk to freedom. The lower court retained 7 for the council. And we are here to say, intermediate court, court of appeal, strike out these remaining 7 counts. Because the lower court never calmly looked at the documentary evidence we placed before it. The respondent, the federal government, the DSS, they never responded to the critical issues we raised.
Meanwhile, David Caswell, counsel to the federal government, declined interview with journalists, but he urged the court to dismiss the appeal for want of merit. He asserted that the IPOB leader was brought back to the country by due process. After listening to both sides, the panel said it would communicate a date for judgment. The case, however, ended with a drama from the IPOB's leader's supporters outside the court. Martia Umar, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Thank you, Mardia, for that report. Now, workers, marketers, and transporters, as well as residents of Awka and other communities of Anambra State on Tuesday, complied with the sit-at-home directive by the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. To this end, all markets, banks, government offices, schools, motor parks, and filling stations were under lock and key. Let's take the report.
A walk along major streets in the state also revealed that markets were locked except for roadside hawkers and petty businesswomen operating along the road. Also, all the shops and business premises along the Amawbia State Command Headquarters road to the popular Zix Avenue and Nkwameini Market were deserted as people did not open for businesses. Commercial bus operators plying various routes within and outside Awka town, the commercial town of Onitsha, and Nnewi were off the routes while the various motor parks were empty. There was, however, skeletal businesses by shop owners few kilometers away from the markets. Tricycle operators and few shuttle bus drivers had a field day as they plied some routes to convey people to their various destinations. Some residents expressed divergent views on the order.
If you cannot obey your local laws, if you cannot obey international laws, then everybody has cause to worry whether you're actually a country of laws. Even investors, investors both within and from outside the countries, will also be worried investing their funds in your country.
UN have given instruction, a specific instruction that Nnamdi Kanu should be released unconditional.
They hoped that the federal government and the group would find a common ground and settle all issues to ensure normalcy in the state.
All right, now workers, marketers and transporters, as well as residents of Awka and other communities of Anambra, beg your pardon, that's the last story we just had. Now, the Nigerian Immigration Service has intercepted a 13-year-old senior secondary student in Kebbi State who was being trafficked to Libya by her mother to work as a domestic servant. The underage girl said that she was transported in a bus from Ogun State and given the telephone number of a man who will take her to Libya. Hamza Galadima has more on the report.
The 13-year-old and a JSS2 student was intercepted according to the controller of customs at a roadblock in Koko town by the men of the immigration service on her way to Libya. The immigration controller Rabi Bashir, while speaking to journalists, explained that the girl, while being interrogated, said her grandmother, who is still in Ogun State, paid for her transportation and gave her a contact number of the person who will ensure her safe arrival in Libya before she boarded the vehicle that conveyed her to Sokoto from Ogun State. And then she took another vehicle to Koko before she was intercepted.
The lady before us here is a 13-year-old girl that was involved in human trafficking. The lady with us here was intercepted at Koko border patrol base on the Friday 9th of September 2022. This lady was intercepted because she was traveling from Ogun to Sokoto without anybody accompanying her.
Also speaking to journalists, the 13-year-old JSS2 student confirmed to them that she was on her way to Libya, where she will be provided a job as a domestic servant.
How old are you?
13 years old.
Then where are you going now?
I'm going to Sokoto.
Where?
Sokoto.
To do what?
Then I'm going to stay at Sokoto. I'm going to call one number that the person is going to come and pick me.
Pick you?
Yeah.
To go to where?
I don't know. I just somewhere.
Who picked her? So how is it that immigration personnel arrested you?
They were asking me some questions and I said I had to calm down.
That?
I had to calm down from the bus.
So who was it? How was the person who invited you? Who was the person to you?
The person like a friend, street friend. Not my friend though. The person that told my grandmother. The person.
You should come and do it?
I said I'm going to go and do a maid.
What?
Maid.
Maid. In Sokoto, Abi, where?
I don't know the place.
You don't know in ETT. Who are you living with?
I'm not living in Ekiti.
Where? Which state?
Ogun State.
Ogun State. Who are you living with?
My grandmother.
Where's your mom and dad?
My mom is at Ogun State. But my dad, I don't know where he's living.
According to the Kebbi State Command of the Immigration Service, the case has since been referred to NAFTIP for further investigation and eventual prosecution. Hamza Galadima Zuru reporting for Trust TV News from Birnin Kebbi.
Thank you, Hamza, for that report. Ayuba, it's one thing to be trafficked by strangers or people you don't know, but by your mother.
In fact, sometimes, you know, there seem to be always some kind of connivance, even with the strangers. There seem to be always some kind of connivance with
between
close
family
relatives.
members, right?
Yes, family members, close relatives, and all of that. And at the end of it, you'd see that probably the expectation for those family members and relatives is perhaps they think that they will be getting something out of it. You know, sometimes some of these traffickers, when they eventually take these people out, they are told, the family members are told that they will be getting some money.
But when you're trafficking, I mean, it's not okay to traffic any gender, right? But your girl child, you can already imagine what she's going to go through. I mean, except you want to pretend, you know.
Apparently, it's not something that the mother at this point care about. Because if she does, that wouldn't be an idea. And sometimes they're actually deceived and told a different story. Oh, okay, I'm going to take your child out. I'm going to train the child.
But don't they hear of all of the other stories? People who have gone, who had those kind of stories, left and came back with very horrifying stories. Is it that people don't learn?
People sometimes think that their case is different.
Will be different.
You know? That's the kind of idea that, you know, people get in their head and all that. But hey, this is the world we live in now, and parents, relatives, you know, guardians should all be wary of this. These are strategies, these are schemes used by traffickers to take people out, you know, and at the end of the day, the person struggles to find his way back.
Yes.
That's if he eventually...
And sometimes the person is battered, damaged, you know.
Exactly. So it's really a sad one.
Yeah.
And we hope that the authorities will continue to, you know, do their bit in checking this, you know, trend of trafficking.
Yeah. All right, on now to some political matters. With only a few months to the 2023 general elections and with political activities gathering momentum around the country, the Labour Party says it is enlarging its base with new structures and strategies to enable it emerge victorious at the presidential election. This was part of deliberations at the party's national retreat. Now let's take a look at the report.
On day 2 of the national retreat of the Labour Party, The party sets up a committee to produce a working document that will include a social contract with Nigerians and also lead discussions on solutions to issues ahead of the 2023 elections.
They are expected to look at the Labour Charter of Demands, look at the manifesto of the party, interface with the candidates, and then come up with a working document which we are going to look and adopt, and it will form the basis of the campaign.
Representative of Labour and trade unions pledged to synergize with the party at the grassroots in the area of enlightenment campaigns and called for the jettisoning of ethnicity, religion, while working together for the common good of the country.
Most Nigerians. So we must be able to unveil that ignorance from the downtrodden Nigerians. We must be able to let them understand that it is not about where anybody is from.
Other stakeholders called on the party to ensure women and youth participation and delivering the right message of a shift from the ultra-conservative economic culture that has been in practice if national rebirth must be the new order.
The Labour Party must begin to mobilize Nigerians to align their democratic choices across all levels, away from their ethnicities and religion, to their individual legitimate economic, security and environmental interests, so that we can have a critical mass of a new order that will usher in good governance post-2023.
The presidential candidate of the party, while asking to work with the Labour Charter, however, asked party members and Nigerians to demand accountability from him when he emerges at the polls.
Your effort, your sacrifice will not be in vain. Whenever we succeed, please let's document it and hold me responsible. All I want is to encourage you, come out with a report, we'll document it, and we know this is what we agreed. And that's what we are doing. Bring that charter of demand.
Labour Party, one of the leading opposition parties, is promising to harness industrial revolution in a bid to provide solutions to the many and long-standing challenges Nigerians face. Aisha Salihu, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, thank you, Aisha, for that report. We'll go for a short break now. When we return, the show continues. Please stay.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
But in a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying. This is Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja, right here on Trust Television. Now, we take a look at the dailies on Daybreak at this point. Now, that we begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. And the lead story here is on insecurity. It says, Northern governors, monarchs back state police. It has the rider that says to harvest 2,000 megawatts of solar power. Says ASU strike hits north more, call for truce. You'd also find other stories. Above the lead story, it says ASU strike, commuters stranded as students block Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. And that's on page 26. Aero to resume flight operations month end as UMSA invests 21.425 billion naira. DSS accuses Mamu of financing terrorists as court extends his detention. That's on page 5 of Daily Trust newspaper. Buhari blames militants for drop in oil revenue on page 6. Bandits free ex-councillor, give him bike to raise 8 million naira for them on page 17. Terrorism. Appeal court reserves judgment in Kanu's trial on page 27. And then pictorial there shows you the meeting held between northern governors, monarchs, where they took that decision to endorse, I would say, support the state policing. And then just below that, Atiku pledges 7 trillion naira economic stimulus fund in first 100 days in office to hold support to ailing state-owned companies, vows to reduce borrowing. Now, let's not forget those still in captivity. It's 454 days. 11 students of FGC Birnin Yauri are still in captivity, and also 1 student of Bethel Baptist High School, Kujama, 427 days since then. We await their release.
All right, now let's take a look at the Leadership newspaper. The Leadership newspaper has a late story that is similar with that of the Daily Trust. It says, insecurity, northern governors, traditional rulers back creation of state police. It has the first rider that says, pledge to support amendment of constitution to achieve goal. Agree to harvest 2,000 megawatts of solar energy to support region's economic activities. Then we also have another rider here, have done well in security infrastructure, PMB declares. Just right above that, amid PDP crisis, IU leaves for Europe, hands over to Damagun. And beneath that, US commits 200 million to climate change fight in Nigeria. We also have a story here that says, respite as diesel price drops by 11%. Anti-labor law, aviation unions issue 14-day ultimatum to government. We also have the story here right beneath the masthead. Banks halt cash disbursement of Forex for BTA and PTA. Also, UK police decline comment on Ekwerimado's health status. Also on the Leadership, court grants DSS request to detain Mamu for 60 days. These are the major stories on the Leadership.
All right, so let's take a look at this day newspaper this morning. The lead story there says 2023, Atiku proposes $10 billion economic stimulus fund for MSMEs, unfolds blueprint. You'd also find the rider says he vows to privatize refineries, then utilize $1.55 billion to revitalize them. Says he will propose legislation to remove electricity from exclusive list. Meets Makinde, Southwest Party leaders today, promises to help PDP win Lagos. You would find at the very top, Buhari hails CBN, NDIC, NICOM, others on financial system stability. Says government tackling insecurity, inflation, mass immigration of talents unsettles banking industry. Gumel, banking innovation must not be at expense of rural communities. You'd also find just below the masthead, NNPCL set to sign 7,000-kilometer gas pipeline contract with Morocco, West African countries. Senate rejects 6 trillion naira tax import duties waivers in 2023 proposed budget. Insist proposed 12.43 trillion naira deficit unacceptable. You'd also would find above the masthead a report: retail investors can unlock $198 billion growth opportunities in Nigeria. That's that for this day newspaper today.
And on to the Guardian newspaper, we have a late story that says APC dressing Nigeria in borrowed robes. Atiku slams Buhari's policies. And under that, we have Owerri streets deserted as Buhari commissions projects in Imo. And there's actually a pictorial there to depict the deserted, that the entire streets were deserted indeed. And just by that, we have Kenya's Ruto sworn in as Oshibajo laws democracy in Africa. And right beneath the masthead, NNPC seals gas pipeline project agreement with Morocco, ECOWAS. Also, ADC's participation in 2023 polls doubtful as INEC rejects caretaker committee. Northern governors monarchs meet, canvass state police to contain insecurity. We also have the story. DSS accuses Tukur Mamu of aiding, abetting local international terrorist organizations. These are the major stories on The Guardian.
All right. On The Nation newspaper this morning, we have the lead story that says, Buhari, we have done well with available resources. And then Makinde, that's just above the masthead, you have the story that says Makinde, Bolarumi clash over Atiku, row over Southwest meeting. You have North's governors, monarchs call for state police. My plan for Nigerians by Atiku at LCCI's forum. Army, we are tracking terror sponsors. Tukur Mamu is a terror financier, DSS tells court. And that's that for The Nation newspaper today.
All right, now let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper has a late story that says Atiku Okowa rubbish APC over Muslim ticket economy. The first writer says unemployment rose by 54% to 68 million. Nigerians poorer under Buhari. The second writer, Muslim ticket dangerous for troubled nation like Nigeria. Okowa tells APC. Northern can restates opposition to same-faith ticket. I have done well, Buhari. And beneath that, we have strike. Motorists stranded as students block Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. And there's actually a pictorial there to depict that. Underneath that, please get 431 petitions over cops' misconduct. Ogunkiship tussle claims 3 lives, houses burnt. Senate begins oil theft probe in Niger Delta. Also above the masthead, Tinubu healthy, APC tells Obi, decries defections. Senate minister disagree over 12 trillion budget deficit. VP slot, Okowa most qualified, Ayo tells critics. And just above that, Angola, Libya overtake Nigeria in crude production. And this is coming from OPEC. These are the major stories on The Punch for today.
All right. So let's get perspectives on some of these stories. We have in the studio Ben Shemang, the Director of News, Voice of Nigeria, to give us perspectives on some of the stories we have this morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
My pleasure, Elia. Thank you very much. Stella, morning.
Thank you.
So beginning with Daily Trust, the lead story talks about northern governors and monarchs coming together to take such a decision of endorsing state policing as a way forward to dealing with security issues in the country. I think this is like, for the first time we're having this coming together and this adoption. Yes, we have had individuals, at the individual level, people, support the idea of a state police, but at this, coming together and at this level, What's the significance of this for us?
That tells you northern governors have now seen the light. People have been clamoring, championing, calling for this, moving for this, but they've always stood aloof, as if it doesn't matter. Now the North is worse for it. It's good that they've now seen the light. But what is it that they have to bring to bear? Approach it the way the Southwest governors have done. All the state governors there sat down, came out with one single name, went to the State Assembly, passed a law, harmonized, and of course, it got the blessing of the Nigerian Constitution. If you check today up north, in fact, the whole country, there is no state that doesn't have a kind of a civilian kind of security outfit to ensure community policing. If therefore the time has come, it has come to stay. In fact, it is coming so late. How many of them indeed have up to a year to stay? If they had done this thing ab initio, I think that the insecurity bedeviling this northern part of the country wouldn't have arisen. And you can see, I can see House of Reps committee telling governors, see, bulletproof cars you now drive in will never save you from this out-of-school syndrome. How many are all over the place? The Almajiris that have been abandoned to their fate. You don't just believe that once a child is being given, it's been given birth to, it's God that has given the birth, God will take care of that child. No, there has to be human beings to provide education, provide health, nurture that child so that society will be better for it.
You see, Mr. Chairman, what you're saying is it's almost exactly what, in doing the story, the Daily Trust newspaper contacted a former AIG, a retired AIG, and he said something. He said he doesn't really understand what the northern governors are talking about, because that's right now, there's a semblance of state police in most states of the country. Even though it's not legal, but they exist in security watch, vigilantes, and all of that. And so he went further to say that the issue is a bit more than that, and that is the fact that this Almajiri you're talking about, out-of-school children, non-payment of salary to teachers and other workers. He says there are all of these things that should be looked at, not just state police.
Absolutely, because like Bob Marley would say, an idle man, idle fingers, will be occupied by somebody who indeed will use them to cause orgy, mayhem, disharmony in society. And the signs are just palpable. And let me also add, Stella, a group came in, Fulani professionals. They said, look, something else is in the offing. There is a general misgiving now. The Hausa are now seeing themselves as Hausa. Those days of Hausa Fulani is no longer tenable. And this is time to nip some of these things in the bud. If you see some of these, warning signals, begin to take action. And it is a common thing in the North. And the North that was always the darling of everywhere. Those days, people will say, let me go take my break, my vacation in Jos. Today, what is happening? So, time has come that the northern governors should do it, and in fact, they should see it as a priority and say, within a month, they can create a law.
The thing is that, this is much more bigger. It will require much more effort than backing or showing support for state policing. It will require constitutional review. And I recall that we've had this, bill proposed to the during the constitutional review, proposed to the state assemblies, and then it was turned down, and all. So, yes, we need constitutional reviews because, yes, like Stella said, we have, pockets of these vigilante groups here and there, but we have not seen a much more formal arrangement, a much more structured arrangement, such that the groups can be empowered the more to be able to serve that function. Because there are those who said, okay, so if you take the Amotekun, for instance, in the Southwest, there have been complaints about them not being armed the way they should be armed so that they can actually deal with this. So beyond, showing the support, What are the expectations now when it comes to the legal framework?
Yeah, in terms of the legal framework, I mean, when you have the Constitution of Nigeria, it is for the entire country. And there are exclusive legislative lists where federal government can adjudicate or handle. Now, when it comes to concurrent legislative list, it also means that anybody I can go into that. Just like you have universities, you have private, you have state government, you have federal. So when it comes to issue of security, of course, in as much as you don't make a law that will counter or challenge the Nigerian constitution that has given you backing to establish security agencies or units, you can always have some provisions that you work together with the federal operatives, especially when the issues are so much, they are higher than what the state government can handle. Of course, you now fall back to the federal. And even at the local government level, you can have what is called residual laws that, they form real world level where they can also police their environment. Any incoming person, new face, strange face, with conducts that are questionable, of course, authorities are called upon. So the Constitution allows Nigerians to do that via these governments. But when people sleep on their rights, and some people feel that, okay, there are unoccupied spaces, there are areas, loopholes I can explore to cause mayhem in society, they will so exploit. So if they've woken up from their slumber, time has come. But again, having been left with just about 8 months or 9 months, it is time that they hit the ground running, so that if they are coming with the harmonized kind of a law, and this is how to handle arms, if individuals are being given permits to buy arms, a police will sign and say you can own this. So what is wrong with the state government having agencies that will just say, okay, all manner of arms, this is what you're going to do. And if it also entails that, yes, individuals that we can see their psychological form, it's so nice, and they can have guns to protect themselves, why not? So let's have all of this in place. And in as much as it does not challenge the ground norm, the Nigerian constitution, so it be.
One of the reasons, and I think the major reasons why people have consistently pushed back on these state polices is the fear that state governors could use it against their opponents. So at this point, what do you think? Is that fear no longer tenable?
Stella, we've seen state governors, I agree with you, who will stay in Calabar and send police to go and, in a juxtaposed way, carry some people they perceive as state enemies and ferry them back to Calabar. We've seen that happening in many other states, but that does not mean, see, I'm a villager. Like I've always said, we use village proverbs. The fact that a man is dead in a stream does not mean that the community should stop drinking water from that stream. So what am I trying to say? If a state governor once used that to cause, to favor himself or deal with his enemy, we shouldn't say that is going to be the practice. And I tell you, like I said, if we begin to harmonize operations with this federal government, I think that there's going to be a better way of doing some of these things. After all, state universities are existing side by side federal universities, and they exist in side by side private universities. So if we have security network system that would just be saying we are pro-human, so be it. Time has come.
All right, so over to the southeastern parts of the country. Yesterday we saw that the president was in Imo State to commission some projects. And also in Anambra State, there was this sit-at-home order that was issued by IPOB because of the judgment that is expected in court for their leader, Nnamdi Kanu, and all that. And we saw the level of compliance. And then on the other side, you have the president, again in Imo State, busy commissioning projects and all of that. If you marry that with the issue of the state policing, will that strengthen our security architecture in any way such that we can deal with subnational issues such as this?
Yeah, you see, the issue of Nnamdi Kanu versus the federal government, well, let me say they are a pressure group. Government has said they are terrorists. And if they so say their leader is being arrested illegally and brought in illegally, as they allege, and therefore they say people should stay at home. If the people feel they should stay at home, okay, let's see if those roads that have been commissioned, the people will not ply the roads. But I think that there is too much injury being done to the southeastern economy. Very industrial people. Go to every village, they all are there. You know, but when we begin to see it as let's flex muscles with the federal government, well, I think it's really not it. I still remember too, about how many months ago, there was this Chief of Army Staff annual conference celebration that was done in the same Imo State. And I had the opportunity of being there. We asked the Chief of Army Staff, why Imo State? Why Owerri? They said, look, we are Nigerian army. We are not for a section. We are for Nigeria. And I still remember, before you fire on, I still remember the governor saying, hey, how I wish you continue doing all this kind of conference here, because for the whole 1 week, there was no incident in Imo State of any bad thing happening, you know. And so I think that time has come that Nigerians of all goodwill should be part of this looking for a solution.
All right. You know, in Anambra, it's talking about looking for a solution. The new governor, Charles Soludo, came in and, you know, he was very determined to see an end to these sit-at-home orders. In fact, he went as far as setting up a committee comprising of, you know, well-meaning citizens, you know, of and indigents of Anambra State that were going to look into this. Some of them rights activists, you know. I remember that Chidi Odin Kalu, former Human Rights Commission boss, was among those in that committee. Charlie Boy, the popular Charlie Boy, is also in that committee. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is it
Obi
Ezekwesili is also, you know, in that committee, and a number of other people. So if you see the level of compliance then in Anambra State, are we making progress really in terms of ending this sit-at-home orders?
Yeah, you see, Charles Soludo, they say the man with solution, came in and he thought that would be a better way of approaching the issue. Instead of the stick, let us bring in the carrot and see how it would happen. But again, those who don't mean well will always question those you've called. They say, oh, these are sellouts. Remember what happened in Ogoni land, where indeed some people felt, let us see what we can do. But a faction will just say, no, you've received government money, you've received our money, money that is meant for development, you receive, you are pocketing, and therefore deceiving us. Such people tend to discredit credible people who indeed are out to make society better. And I think that there is the need for people to mellow down. How long will this last?
Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up to Ayuba's question, we're talking about state police. In that region, there's something we call Ebubeagu. They came in to tackle this. And so far, we haven't seen anything. So what is even the guarantee that the solution to the security situation is actually state police?
The guarantee is to try.
We're trying with Ebubeagu in the southeast.
Yes, you're trying you tried that in a situation where some people have formed a movement. And you know a movement is not easy removing the ideology of a movement, who indeed the members will feel we've been cheated, and our answer is no to any other person outside our leadership. You know, and once you have this extremist kind of a thing, you have to have some rethinking, and that's why at the point, those who feel they should know, they can approach some things in a very radical way. Can you penetrate these people, break their ranks, and form some counter groups against one another? Before you know it, you weaken it. Is it not possible? Is it not doable? It is. In the Niger Delta, they used to have one group, but in the end, they broke into how many agencies? At the point, disagreement, then they said, look, Yaradua said, I hereby offer amnesty. Some guys said, look, This man even talking in a frail way, I grant you amnesty. Is it going to work? And it came out to work. I remember having a program with Asare Dokubo. For 30 minutes, we discussed with this man. So, well, if Yaradua is going to be the savior of the situation, we'll wait and see. But we'll take it gently, softly, and try to see how we'll work with them. And it turned out to be one good thing. So if we do have some people, some contact persons, that some of these people at home and abroad, that they listen to, because some people will just have to go behind the scene, talk with them, negotiate with them, and let's see how we move forward. Now, I mean, if you say there has to be justice, the three R's, rehabilitation, reconciliation, reconstruction, and they are saying since after the Civil War, the southeastern part, the Igbo portion, has not witnessed quite a lot of those things. They said counting where's the railway today, but where you have bad roads, it's always in the northeast. But again, you check, many of the contractors are also from the from the eastern part of this country. They are citizens. So why is it that they failed to do something for their region?
Okay, out of curiosity, I'm just saying, perhaps it's a coincidence or perhaps it's premeditated. Yesterday, the commissioning of those projects in Imo State is happening just as when the court was set to give judgment on the issue of Nnamdi Kanu there. And then we have also the sit-at-home coinciding as well. Is there any, reason for this?
Well, just like you said, coincidence. Because look, President Buhari's visit to that place was pre-planned. And it was planned when the sit-at-home order had always been going on. And so, with the president,
the sit-at-homes have always been Mondays.
Well, if they felt they should extend, they so did it, and there was compliance. But you see,
because IPOB have said, whenever their leader Nnamdi Kanu is going to be appearing in court, then that day there will be sit at home. That's the understanding now.
Yeah, so if the court also said your appearance is on a Tuesday, so date, and that also tallied with the president's going as president and commander-in-chief, CNC. Just like the Chief of Army Staff, Farouk Yahya, said, we are Nigerian Army, we can hold our conference any portion of Nigeria. Buhari is president of Nigeria, he can choose to go to any part of the country because he is CNC. If many of these things just coincide, it's just by mere coincidence. If deliberately they were planned to be so, and let's test the ground to see who blinks first, who withdraws, who bows down, who submits to who. Time came. Now, Tuesday has passed. I think today we've not seen any incident. Yes, the streets were empty, but some will say, yeah, the police will feel, okay, we didn't have much to fear for the life of the president. And the president will beat his chest and say, yeah, as CNC, I went there against all odds. And people were dancing. Some people were there. We saw them. And jokingly, a journalist, Andrew Taylor, even gave him a title, Aka Chukwu, God's hand. And so, I think that we should have people of note, stakeholders. Like I said, there are some big people somewhere, they might not even be citizens, who are friends of some people. The Kanu Nnamdi group, he has dual citizenship. Are there some friends influential in government, in the British system, who indeed you can speak to? This is where government will come in. Incidentally, Nigeria even has what they call contact persons. Linda Choka used to be the person who speaks for Nigeria unofficially and officially to see that they accept Nigeria in whatever they're doing. In America, you had Andrew Young, who indeed was always persuading the American government behind the scene to see how they will assist Nigeria. So if time has come for some people outside the scene to work with Kanu Group to ensure there is peace in Nigeria, why not?
All right, Mr. Ben, away from some of these national issues, there's this story on page 16 of the Daily Trust. It says, man beats dad for warning him against bad friends. The reason I'm raising this story is because only yesterday we had a story of a boy who attempted to kill his father. In fact, he made 3 attempts on the life of his father. He even used rat poison but the man survived him. And then when the man survived him, he went to get a gun. You are a father yourself, and should fathers be worried?
Not just fathers. Should humanity be worried? And you see, Stella, let's look at psychologically. What informed this kind of a decision? If a father is saying, I'm warning you against bad friends, he probably knows something about the bad friends. Like it is said, show me your friend and I tell you who you are. If those friends are armed robbers, of course, the father is already having some fears. But why should the child take into that? If they are they take drugs, are dealing in drugs, and of course, drugs can influence you anyhow. You see your mother and say, see a bad man. I mean, so when drugs are on, and they can give you that phantom, that assurances that, look, you even have a knife, but you see a policeman with AK-47, you say he's only holding a stick. I mean, so right. If truly society is supposed to be the best for it, we should also look at what religion can do. We should teach our people, children, when parents don't see children going to places of worship, please woo them. Okay. And there shouldn't be a gap between parents. Daughter, father, mother, son, and all that.
I wouldn't want us to finish this review without looking at this story that is quite interesting, really. It's about the daughter of the former Deputy Senate President, Ike Ekweremadu. We have now a lady who is offering her kidney to save Ekweremadu's daughter. And this is coming I would say is about a few days after the daughter of Ike Ekweremadu declared that she's in need and she needs help, and crying out sort of an SOS, to the public that she needs a kidney. And let's not forget also the crisis, I would say the legal tussle that ensued after the whole allegations about kidney theft, and all that over in the UK. And all that. What's your response to this?
Yeah, you see, when this story first broke out, or when there was breaking news over this incident, what I remembered was Ike Mefuna and Things Fall Apart. That was just hacked to death, innocent man. It invoked pity. Now you're talking of a situation where, yes, someone had offered to go give the kidney for another person to live. I think it's such a lovely, lovely thing. But what are the laws saying in some other countries? And that's where we have the crisis. At the point, if the law is made for man, I think we shouldn't go legalism. Legalism means, as said, stipulated in law, you must follow it. But if that is injurious to humanity, at the point you begin to look at it socially. How do we? Public outcry. People are saying, have pity on this family. He's now how many days now? Is it 183 or 83 days? I've forgotten. Been detained. Same thing with the wife. The daughter is busy begging. In the end, if they say, okay, Ekweremadu, we have decided null prosecute. We no longer have interest to prosecute your matter. It could be too late. And that's why the daughter is crying outside the court system. Someone help me. And a lady is offering to do that. Would the British system accept that if the sick Ekweremadu's daughter is in London and this one who has offered to go, would they give her visa to go? Will she go there? What would the law say over there? If the law says we don't sell, okay, fine. And the friend is saying, I am dashing my kidney so that my friend can live as a fellow human being. I think it is good, Ethan, that the British system should look at it. Is really kidney transfer illegal? Or we should save life?
Well, for what we know so far, on the leadership, there's a story that says UK police have declined comment on Ekweremadu's health status. So we'll continue to follow up with this story and see the response that follows the offer, by this lady who went on Facebook actually to write, to say that, to declare that she's actually offering her kidney to the daughter of Ekwere Madu, and so she herself is waiting the response of the daughter now after sending a mail to her. So we'll continue to follow up on that. We wish Sonia Ekwere Madu a quick recovery as soon as possible, and then we hope that the legal tussle will come to an end as soon as possible. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
We hope so.
And sharing your perspectives with us.
Thank you very much. We hope so that life is protected. One person's life matters.
Yes, indeed it does. All right, that's that for the newspaper review section of the Daybreak show. We'll take a short breather now, and then when we return, we'll take a look at some more issues here. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, it's top of the hour. Let's take a look at the headlines again. You're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja, right here on Trust Television. The headlines: insecurity Northern governors, traditional rulers support state police.
New Kenyan president, Nigeria's vice president attends Ruto's swearing-in.
Anthony Joshua agrees to fight Fury in December.
Now let's take the details. Northern state governors and northern traditional rulers have voiced support for the establishment of state police as part of measures to tackle banditry, insurgency, kidnapping, and other forms of insecurity in the region. The meeting between the governors and traditional rulers in Abuja reviewed the state of security in the north and other matters relating to progress and development of the region. A communique read by the chairman, Northern Governors Forum, and Plateau State Governor Simon Lalong said the meeting resolved to support amendment of the Constitution to accommodate the establishment of state police. According to him, this will effectively and efficiently address the security challenges of the region.
Now, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo represented President Muhammadu Buhari at the swearing-in of William Ruto as the 5th President of independent Kenya at a ceremony in the capital, Nairobi, on Tuesday. Mr. Ruto, the former Deputy President, was handed a copy of Kenya's Constitution and a sword to represent the transfer of power from President Uhuru Kenyatta. He described his emergence as president as a testimony because a village boy has become the president of Kenya, referring to the fact that he grew up in rural Kenya. Defeated candidate Raila Odinga did not attend, but new president had conciliatory words for all his opponents, promising to work with all Kenyans irrespective of who they voted for. Vice President Osinbajo described Ruto's inauguration as a celebration of democracy and democratic institutions in Africa because the structures in Kenya held up and ensured that the processes were properly followed and justice was done. With his inauguration, Ruto becomes the second ethnic Kalenjin after the late Daniel Arap Moi held the office.
Preserve, protect, and defend this Constitution of Kenya as by law established and all other laws of the Republic.
The swearing-in is, as has been said, a celebration of democracy, and the reasons are obvious. We found a situation where, the elections themselves, the campaigns were quite fractious. There was quite a bit of hostility here and there, but the institutions held up. The IEBC, the equivalent of our own INEC, and the judiciary, they held up and ensured that not only were processes properly followed, but also that justice was done.
Now, Anthony Joshua has accepted to fight current world heavyweight champion Tyson Fury in Cardiff on December 3rd, 2022. After Joshua's loss in Saudi Arabia last month, Fury had challenged him to a fight. In a statement, Joshua's management announced that 258 and Matchroom Boxing can confirm on behalf of Anthony Joshua that we accepted all terms presented by Fury for a fight on December 3rd. Due to the Queen's passing, it was agreed to halt all communications, but we are awaiting response, the statement said. In reaction to the statement, Fury's promoter, Frank Warren, tweeted, "Contract will be with you very soon." Joshua is said to earn £75 million from the fight at the Principality Stadium in the Welsh capital city, following Fury's 40% offer to him from the fight purse. Fury had planned a fight against Usyk in December, but the Ukrainian declined, which made Fury turn his attention to Joshua.
All right, now let's take a look at some packages. President Muhammadu Buhari on Tuesday commissioned various projects in Owerri, the Imo State capital. The president also visited stakeholders of the APC at the State House. This was amidst the sit-at-home order purportedly declared by the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, as their leader, Nnamdi Kanu, appeared in court on Tuesday in Abuja.
Nigeria, smooth provision, by taking
governance and the rest of the country. This can be seen in our commitment to certain critical projects such as deep seaport, new airport terminals and buildings, various railway projects, a network of gas and power infrastructure, roads and bridges, including the second Niger Bridge, telecommunications, infrastructure, mentioned but a few.
These three projects are part of the signature projects which are currently receiving the attention of my administration. It is noteworthy, however, to mention that there are several other road and infrastructure projects which my administration is undertaking. While some of these have been completed, many more are still under construction or awaiting inauguration.
All right, from Imo State, now let's go to Plateau State, where the police command has vowed to arrest killers of the 14-year-old Mariam Salisu, who was murdered on Tuesday on the outskirts of Babale village of just North local government area of Plateau State. The State Commissioner Bartolome Onyeka, represented by the Divisional Police Officer of Nasarawa Gwong Division, Musa Hassan, said this when he visited the residence of the deceased. Trust TV had reported that the deceased was killed with some of her vital organs removed during the incident. Let's take the report.
This is the hill where Mariam Salisu and 12 other girls went to fetch firewood for their parents. Mariam couldn't return alive after she was attacked by a man suspected to be a ritualist who killed and dumped her corpse in a trench. When the corpse of Mariam was discovered in a trench with her vital organs removed, the entire village of Babale was thrown into confusion, with many saying the incident was the first the community is experiencing in more than 50 years. The divisional police officer in the area, while condoling with Mariam's family, vowed that the police will do everything possible to arrest the perpetrator and bring him to book.
This morning we are here for two things. We are here to see the Sarki on how to synergize to make sure those perpetrators are arrested and brought to book. And also to assure the family that we are doing everything within our reach to ensuring that those that commit that act are arrested and brought to book. And we are calling for the entire community to give us this information that will lead us to the arrest of the suspect.
Mariam's family say they will be grateful if the culprit is arrested and pray Allah to give the police the wisdom to get him apprehended.
Alhamdulillah, na gode wa Allah suka zo su taimaka mu cikin wannan hali da muke ciki. Allah Ubangiji ya taimaka musu, Allah ya taimake su kokarin da suka yi.
Responding on behalf of the community, the acting district head, Aminu Mai Samari, also appreciated the police for their commitment towards arresting the culprit.
I also appreciate the Commissioner of Police, the DPO Nasarawa Gwong, the area command, and other vigilante and neighborhood watch that contributed to this matter. I want to appreciate them. I want to also send my condolences to them for missing this daughter. Unfortunate happenings that happens in the high hill there. We took this hill as a place of blessing because we get food there, we get things to do. If we bring the firewood, we use it for cooking, we sell it, we buy food.
The DPO, however, cautions the residents of the area to desist from sending teenagers to the bush or farm for any reason, especially now that elections are around the corner. Ado Musa, Trust TV News, Jos.
All right, now moving on. The Court of Appeal in Abuja has reserved judgment on an appeal filed by the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, seeking to quash the terrorism and treasonable felony charge the federal government preferred against him. The IPOB leader, who is currently facing trial before the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja, had approached the Court of Appeal to query the legal competence of the charge pending against him. Take a look.
Arguing the appeal claim before a three-man panel led by Justice Hannatu Jummai Sankey, Ozokemo alleged that his client was forcefully abducted from Kenya and illegally renditioned back to the country.
But instead of the lower court striking out the entire 50-count charge and allowing Nnamdi Kanu to go home a free man after the long walk, like Nelson Mandela, long walk to freedom, the lower court retained 7 of the counts. And we are here to say, intermediate court, court of appeal, strike out these remaining 7 counts. Because the lower court never calmly looked at the documentary evidence we placed before it. The respondent, the federal government, the DSS, they never responded to the critical issues we raised.
Meanwhile, David Caswell, counsel to the federal government, declined interview with journalists, but he urged the court to dismiss the appeal for want of merit. He asserted that the IPOB leader was brought back to the country by due process. After listening to both sides, the panel said it would communicate a date for judgment. The case, however, ended with a drama from the IPOB's leader's supporters outside the court. Martia Umar, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Now to Anambra State, where workers, marketers and transporters, as well as residents of Oka and other communities, on Tuesday complied with a sit-at-home order given by the indigenous people of Biafra IPOB. To this end, all markets, banks, government offices, schools, motor parks and filling stations were under lock and key. Trust TV put together this package.
A walk along major streets in the state also revealed that markets were locked except for roadside hawkers and petty businesswomen operating along the road. Also, all the shops and business premises along the Amawabia State Command Headquarters road to the popular Zix Avenue and Nkwaamenyi Market were deserted as people did not open for businesses. Commercial bus operators plying various routes within and outside Oka town, the commercial town of Onitsha, and Nnewi were off the routes while the various motor parks were empty. There was, however, skeletal businesses by shop owners few kilometers away from the markets. Tricycle operators and few shuttle bus drivers had a field day as they plied some routes to convey people to their various destinations. Some residents expressed divergent views on the order.
If you cannot obey your local laws, if you cannot obey international laws, then everybody has cause to worry whether you're actually a country of laws. Even investors, investors both within and from outside the countries, will also be worried investing their funds in your country.
UN have given instruction, a specific instruction that Nnamdi Kanu should be released unconditional.
They hoped that the federal government and the group would find a common ground and settle all issues to ensure normalcy in the state.
All right, now the Nigerian Immigration Service has intercepted a 13-year-old senior secondary student in Kebbi State who was being trafficked to Libya by her mother to work as a domestic servant. The underage girl said that she was transported in a bus from Ogun State and given the telephone number of a man who will take her to Libya. Hamza Galadima from Kebbi files in this report.
The 13-year-old and a JSS2 student was intercepted according to the controller of customs at a roadblock in Koko town by the men of the immigration service on her way to Libya. The immigration controller Rabi Bashir Nuhu, while speaking to journalists, explained that the girl, while being interrogated, said her grandmother, who is still in Ogun State, paid for her transportation and gave her a contact number of the person who will ensure her safe arrival in Libya before she boarded the vehicle that conveyed her to Sokoto from Ogun State. And then she took another vehicle to Koko before she was intercepted.
The lady before us here is a 13-year-old girl that was involved in human trafficking. the lady with us here was intercepted at Koko border patrol base on the Friday 9th of September 2022. This lady was intercepted because she was traveling from Ogun to Sokoto without anybody accompanying her.
Also speaking to journalists, the 13-year-old JSS2 student confirmed to them that she was on her way to Libya, where she will be provided a job as a domestic servant.
How old are you?
13 years old.
Then where are you going now?
I'm going to Sokoto.
Where?
Sokoto.
To do what?
Then I'm going to stay at Sokoto. I'm going to call one number that the person is going to come and pick me.
Pick you?
Yeah.
To go to where?
I don't know. They are just somewhere.
Who picked her? So how is it that immigration personnel arrested you?
They were asking me some questions and I said I had to calm down.
That?
I had to calm down from the bus.
So who was it? How was the person who invited you? Who was the person to you?
The person is like a friend, yeah. Street friend. Not my friend though. The person that told my grandmother. The person. I said we are going to go and do a maid.
What?
Maid.
Maid. In Sokoto, where?
I don't know the place.
You don't know? In Ekiti. Who are you living with?
I'm not living in Ekiti.
Where? Which state?
Ogun State.
Ogun State. Who are you living with?
My grandmother.
Where's your mom and dad?
My mom is at Ogun State. But my dad, I don't know where he's living.
According to the Kebbi State Command of the Immigration Service, the case has since been referred to NAFTIP for further investigation and eventual prosecution. Hamza Galadima Zuru reporting for Trust TV News from Birnin Kebbi.
All right, thank you, Hamza Galadima, for that report. With that, we'll now go for a short break. When we return, we're going to the discussion segment of the show. Don't go anywhere.
All right, thank you for staying. You're watching Daybreak reach you live from the nation's capital in Abuja, right here on Trust Television. Now, going into our discussion of the day, an imminent industrial action is underway as airport workers give the federal government a 2 weeks deadline to meet their demand over an anti-labor clause stipulated in the recently amended aviation bill. The union said that the federal government should pull down the unfavorable clauses, stating that the amended bill gives the Minister of Aviation absolute power over the unions. In their argument, the union were of the opinion that the stipulated clause goes against international labor laws and also poses an encroachment on the duties and jurisdiction of the Minister of Labor. We'll be talking about this, and we have in the studio a strategist and policy analyst. He is Yusuf Baba. And then hopefully we'll have also the General Secretary, Air Transport Services, Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, join us later in person of Francis Akinjole. He'll hopefully join us later as we discuss further. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so before we begin our discussion, we'll take a short clip, of what exactly is going on.
World Press Conference here in the airport in Lagos. And this was predicated upon what we heard and even saw that they were planning to do, as in to enact law that will outlaw trade union activism and activities in Nigerian airports. Right from 1977, when they introduced this Essential Services, Trade Dispute Essential Services Act into our life by decree, and which they later turned into act. You know the style, the type of regime we were operating then, the military regime. They are coercive in nature. And now, they are now deeming it necessary to import this and foist on us as aviation workers.
The aviation workers are being denied their rights and privileges to engage in unionism. From the act that was being submitted through the National Assembly to the presidency, we have, been inundated that the act has been smuggled into, some clauses, some obnoxious clauses, which would denied the unions in aviation industry to perform their rights as enshrined in the Trade Union Act.
All right, so good enough. We have Comrade Francis Akinjole now joining us virtually. He's the General Secretary, Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. If you can hear me, Francis, good morning. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak. All right, so while we try to sort that out, Yusuf, thank you so much for joining again. Well, this is the situation that we are in. We have already an existing crisis with the aviation fuel, the rising cost, the inflation generally, the scarcity of dollar rocking the aviation sector. And now added to that, we now have this, threat of a strike by, aviation workers and all of that. What are the projections for the aviation sector as it stands?
To be honest, to my mind, in my opinion, this is highly unnecessary. I don't know how we came about this, but like you rightly mentioned, we have enough crisis in a critical sector, as it were, and to have this very key industrial crisis is one too many. I don't know how strategic that or the import of the inclusion of these provisions that trigger this crisis or how it happened, because I hear words about smuggling or boggled. We understand and we know the process of legislation is clear. Engagement of stakeholders, robust debates and conversations before the legislation emerges and is passed, if indeed it was smuggled, or if indeed it was passed without the knowledge of some critical stakeholders like the unions, which I don't think it is, whatever it is, I don't think is strategic at this point in time for the sector, you know, and I don't think is the way to go.
So it's said that aviation workers are now essential workers, basically, by that law. Aren't they aren't they qualified, or I would say, aren't they to be essential workers?
You see, we are trying to hold on to like 5 melons with 2 arms, Ayuba. The Medical Association of Nigeria are threatening to go on strike. The Nurses Association of Nigeria are threatening to go on strike. ASU is on strike. Are they not essential workers? Let us define what essential workers are. And I think in fairness to the unionists, we are living in an era of democracy. And the labor unionism is actually to differentiate between slavery and free trade and freedom. In the case of aviation, I think you should know one of the most unionized entities or industries in the world is aviation. And you can go back and check how countries have been engaging aviation unionists and how they have almost crippled economies in Europe, in Americas, and everywhere else. So I think it should have been a well thought out consideration. Designation of aviation workers as essential workers is normal, it's standard. Yes, aviation workers are essential workers, just like journalists are essential workers.
Well, the aviation workers, one of their statements said that during the public hearing,
yes,
that when the issue came up, that they drew the attention of the lawmakers to a judgment by the industrial court, which stated clearly that aviation workers were not essential workers. But that put aside, they came out last Thursday to say that they didn't like the section 67, subsection 1 to 3. They didn't like that, and they called it obnoxious. However, some persons are saying that, okay, you spoke about it last Thursday. Was it enough time to now protest on Monday? Couldn't there have been some form of engagement with stakeholders before that protest?
Well, I am not a union member, and I'm sure when you see, water boiling, there's a process before the water gets to boil. I don't know what must have transpired behind the scene, and I don't know what the union members must have heard or been told for them to take this action. And indeed, we know unionists can also be very proactive. I think they are trying to assert themselves, and I think they want to be heard, and I think they want to force the hands of authorities into a conversation with regards to these provisions, so that discussions can take place. And like I said, giving the tag of essential workers, to my mind, speaking from a generalist perspective, it doesn't take away the importance of the unionist. Of course, maybe from the legislative perspective or from a legal perspective. Indeed, it's a critical sector, and indeed, it is highly required.
Exactly, because I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that being an essential worker, does it mean that you do not have rights to belong to associations, which is a right provided by the Constitution in the first place? Absolutely. I mean, we have doctors, aren't they essential workers? Yet they embark on strikes, isn't it? So what the intent now is the issue as regards the aviation workers. What exactly is possibly the intent, of having this?
Well, I wouldn't know. I can just hazard a guess. From my stand-up point of view, is maybe to try to minimize disruptions, quote and unquote, of activities or operations in the sector, and also maybe to reduce or whittle down the influence of unionism, within the strategic and operational framework of the sector, maybe to ensure as much as possible high availability of service if and when needed, or at all time. The question is that really possible, with this kind of situation, like you mentioned, when you come this way?
When I thought about it, like you said, being an essential worker, we have essential workers in Nigeria that go on strike. Doctors,
absolutely,
essential workers.
So earlier,
however, when you look at the new Civil Aviation Act, 67, after describing them as essential workers, subsection 1 goes further to say that it therefore means that the minister can at any point say no unionism. So could that be why? Maybe that provision, that particular one, maybe if that act had stopped at calling them essential workers, without that provision, do you think that maybe that could have saved the situation?
Stella, you hit the nail on the head. That in itself, to my mind, if I was on the side of the Honorable Minister, whom I regard so high, have a lot of respect for, I would have whispered to him to say, this is a red herring, because first of all, it also runs counter to the rule. We have a Minister of Labor and Productivity, and indeed we have the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Who is the person that can say no unionism? What are the process for us to promulgate unionism, for example? Is it with a whiff of a pen of a minister of a particular sector, for example? So I think that provision, I don't know the intent, but I think that provision came out wrongly, and it doesn't sit well within the provision of that act as a stakeholder. Now I'm speaking as a stakeholder of the sector, and I don't think it is something that should be allowed. We should review that position in the interest of peace, in the interest of industrial harmony. Don't forget, the sector has consolidated unions, different unions that take care of some various silos of these critical service providers. And there is no way you can take them head on and you expect the efficiency of a sector that should be better than what we have today to happen. This has to be reviewed, to my mind.
In any case, is there any benefits, of having these unions, in the aviation sector, other than, because, what we all know, or what Nigerians mostly know about unions is when it comes to issue of strike, or when it comes to issue of protesting for, the benefits of workers and the rest. Are there other benefits of having unions?
Ayuba, I will just try to correct a bit remove a word of salaries, but to use the word of welfare. I think the unions are fighting for the welfare and the well-being of their colleagues in whatever industry it is, whether aviation, whatever, is to ensure that the paymasters or the employers, are fair, in addressing the welfare issues of the staff. And to that extent, if that is the case, they are very relevant. We talk about the principle of collective bargaining. We talk about not just salaries, the welfare, general well-being, Medicare, life after work, and all those provisions. And I think the whole idea, even if we go back to the history of labor unions, is to apply that counter pressure to the employer to ensure there's a balance between the employer and the employee in terms of the service and the service provider and the person that is ensuring the service is being provided. So to my mind, it's all about engagement all the time, having worked in that industry as well, to know it's all about engagement. And the moment you start bringing in these provisions, it presupposes that there's ill will or there's ill intent with regards to how the staff, now quote and unquote, not just unions. The unions is assumed as speaking on behalf of the staff. And then there's a plan, and that's where you have notions about there's going to be mass sack, there's going to be regeneration and all those kind of things. That may or may not be the case. And I think in the principle of transparency and fairness, it is rather to engage properly, discuss the issues, get to a middle ground, and let us move on. It's a highly critical sector. We don't need disruptions at this point.
But generally speaking, are there instances where you could say the unions are a bit overreaching when it comes to just going for a strike? Take, for instance, what happened at Kano Airport. On that particular day, yes, there was going to be this protest by the airport workers. But then at the Kano Airport, there was a dispute between FAN, Federal Airport Authority, and the Nigeria Airspace Management Agency. Yes. And the dispute was because they cut off electricity supply to the accommodation of the Nigeria Airspace Management, the staff of that place. And because of that, the air traffic operators decided to shut down work. And so nobody could move out of the airport. Would you say that was enough? Because the reason that was given for cutting the electricity supply was due to non-payment of the electricity, though.
Okay. Now, that is a different conversation from this issue of legislation. That is what I consider an internal issue that was not handled properly, with due respect to the CEOs of the NAMA and FAN. Okay, FAN provides service to NAMA. But how do we end up with this situation where you have members of the same family? NAMA and FAN all belongs to the aviation sector, are not able to sort out this issue, are not able to find a way and manner to deal with this issue. Yes, at the end of the day, if NAMA is not responsive, FAN has to take action, I agree. But you sit down and look at the far-reaching consequences. Like you said, they cut off the power supply to their accommodation and all that. And what they are saying is, if that impacts on our welfare, we don't care what is happening at the top, but you can't just wake up and there's no light. So I think in this particular case, is a function of two elephants that we are fighting, and the grass is suffering. In this case, it's a thorn, not just an ordinary grass. So to that extent, the union are crying out and saying, you cannot cut off the light of our colleagues to live in darkness just because the authorities now, in this case, you employers should sort out yourselves and leave us alone, so to speak, and are reaching out on behalf of their colleagues. And you talk about being overactive or overreactive. You see, the history of labor unionism has always been on the platform of being aggressive, of being assertive, you know, with regards to the demands or the needs or the yearnings or aspirations of their colleagues. That is how they operate, okay? And from experience also, sometimes early proactive reach out and engagement curtails this kind of situation. I give you an instance. There was a time I was working in an organization where, in the aviation sector, where it was practically clear that the entire staff will down tools. And it means aircrafts will not, let's say 65% of the aircrafts will not be handled for the next day. And you know what that means to the aviation sector, both international and domestic flights. And it's a critical welfare issue that had to be addressed. We had to make sure, late into the early hours of that morning, that that issue is addressed or was addressed to avoid that very thorny situation. Because when that happens, on the face of it, first of all, is not good. The impact on Nigeria, the impact on the economy, the socio-economic impact of the economy and the polity is not good. So the top lines, my advice to the top lines is constructive engagements and listening to what I call the early warning systems. From experience, the labor unions have a way of reaching out, of voicing out early enough. They don't operate clandestinely, okay? Because within the framework of unionism, also there is this provision that ensures that they must reach out, they must speak out, they must give timelines before they take actions. And then sometimes also you can look at it from their own tactics of ensuring they are heard.
Would you say that the activities of unions, you know, sort of sometimes hindered a smooth running of airline operations? That is, when it comes to employer and an employee kind of relationship and all of that, and perhaps maybe if there could be a correlation between the airline operators and the legislators to find a way to, you know, maybe silence that aspect of that relationship.
I've been very generous with your words, Ayuba. It's not sometimes, it's all the time. From air traffic controllers to pilots to crew members to ground handling operators, the entire aviation value chain are unionized. And these guys, there's every critical point, someone that has to do something for us to have a successful operation. So it's not even sometimes, it's all the time. Engagement of the stakeholders is very important. Sensing and influencing is very critical, because that will help in many cases avoid this kind of either embarrassing situations or even potential disaster.
All right. So let's join our guests virtually. Francis Akinjole, the General Secretary, Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, for his own perspectives. Thank you so much, Francis, for joining us from Daybreak. Yes, so if you can hear me, just go ahead and tell us What exactly are the reasons behind this, beyond what we have read from the papers and the rest of them, being a member of a general secretary of one of the unions there?
Last Thursday, precisely this year, we have detailed every proposed law. The proposed law, because only two of them are using. The remaining are and we stress it was now before we reaching in the Nigerian airport in general. The high their intention union into the realm of government. You may recall that maybe because that one has advantage, but it appears they have something they want the workers to try again. They have now decided to have this thing, every voice that will voices of workers through their union. And right, there is process, there is reviews, there could be areas of labor industry. So what are we saying? Are we not planting? Because we don't have evidence in the waiting industry. What we are doing, it is better for us to allow for contrary opinion. They cannot claim monopoly in every matter that affects the interest of workers.
All right, Mr. Akinjole. All right, Mr. Akinjole, if you can hear me. The aviation workers, is it just the fact that they have been named part of people that offer essential services, or the second part of that provision, 67 subsection 2, that gives the minister certain powers? Is that the problem the workers are having? If for instance, that section was not in that act, would the workers be okay by just calling them essential workers, but not giving the minister those powers over unionism and all of that?
I want to believe that you understand the implication of what essential services mean to the people that brought. Every Nigerian understands. It is not today that we are hearing that police, military, whatever are essential services providers. And what's the implication? They cannot protect. And the reason, we have to read this thing communally. And the reason why they have now granted the power of regulating the unions in the aviation industry to the Minister of Education is because they don't want us to talk. As a matter of fact, the power to even produce the unions in the aviation industry is just to the Minister of Aviation. So what are we saying? We are not fighting this in isolation. We are not protesting against it in isolation. If you say we must not do this, everything is already provided for in the Labour Act. So why are they now duplicating? Is it not going to be a double jeopardy? We are being regulated by the Minister of Labour, who are the experts in affairs of labor unions, and we are now attempting to grant those powers to the Minister of Aviation, who is a specialist in his own field as well. Is it not precarious for us as
All right,
unions?
so Akinjole, you are making a demand and you are giving an ultimatum of 2 weeks to the federal government and the National Assembly to review this bill. I mean, the lawmakers are just barely returning from a recess. How practical is it that this bill will be revisited within these 2 weeks and then that part of the bill is expunged?
Well, I will not sit here to see them how they organize themselves for the purpose of doing their job. They knew what they have done. A bill that is inimical to the interest of workers and by extension, interest of the nation was presented before the president for his assent. The president has assented to 2, and we have now raised our voice. Whatever magic they may do to make this happen is left to them. We will not stop doing what we are meant to do for the protection of the interests of our members. They can cut short of their vacation. This is a subject of national interest. If they didn't please, they said we are essential service provider.
But you know, there's a lot of questions around.
Essential situation.
There's a lot of questions around how this part of the bill was even assented to by the president. I mean, weren't there public hearings? I mean, if there was, how then did this part of the bill scale through?
Okay, that is what we should also see as a mischievous intention from some quarters. We were all at the public hearing where we deliberated diligently upon the bills, the proposed bills then. It was in only the civil aviation that the president of one of the unions raised the issue of services. And the lawmakers were advised that there is a subsisting judgment by National Industrial Court delivered by Justice E.N. Ajakova in February 2014, where aero contractors was not considered as essential services providers. And because said that they are not providing any essential services, any different from Ekene Dilichukwu or any other transport company. So where have they now brought in their own essential service coloration? And this law has not been reversed. I mean, this judgment has not been reversed. And even, what is the definition of essential services? We all know what essential services is. And in our trade disputes at essential services Act, it was clearly stated those that are referred to as essential services.
So
airlines are not.
So are you objecting to this provision because aviation workers are not essential service providers, or because it will deny you the opportunity to, have unions and also agitate for your welfare? Okay, it appears that our network, we are unable to have, this smooth session. But let's come back to our studio, Yusuf Baba. You heard all that he has to say. What's your, reactions to some of the things that he have raised?
Well, basically, Comrade we were saying things almost the same differently. The good thing is bringing the clarity within the Trade Union Act conversation and bringing the fact that there's a subsisting judgment with regards to the declaration or designation of the aviation workers as non-essential workers. And indeed, if that is the case, then we have a subsisting judgment that everybody should align to. They have not heard any superior judgment from the Court of Appeal or Supreme Court in that regard, and looking at it from the legal perspective. In discussions about legislation, this particular piece of legislation, recall I was wondering aloud, you know, hearing things about smuggling or boggled, and asking the question about if these discussions were not part of the public hearing or stakeholder engagement which is part of the process of legislation. And Comrade just told us, or before he went offline, that obviously, most likely, that was not the case. And if that is not the case, that brings an issue, you know, of managing the situation, if the case may, as the case may be.
As a stakeholder in the
industry,
in
yes.
the industry yourself,
Yes.
the aviation workers say they have reached out to the lawmakers who say that they were not the ones who inserted that, what they call obnoxious section, into the bill. The minister responded yesterday saying he wasn't the one that inserted that provision. Now, who else could have done that?
Stella, we are Nigerians, and we've had cases. Remember the famous budget pardon situation scenario. I was not part of this conversation, but we all know that there is no how a provision will just appear. A piece of legislation, as serious as it is, to be presented to the president of this country for accent, and all the critical players, and all the critical handlers, and all the critical facilitators and custodians of this very important piece of document that should be tagged high priority confidential, and then by magic it appeared. You know, it doesn't sound well, it doesn't sit well.
All right, so I understand that we now have Francis back, so let's get his final thoughts. Francis, in 1 minute, if you may tell us, I was trying to get clarity as to, why this is causing this kind of agitation. Is it because, you are not an essential service providers, that's the aviation workers, or is it because it denies you the opportunity to to vent your frustration and your concerns?
Yes, we have matured enough to understand the intention of the people that smuggled it into the bill before it is going to become an act. They want to gag the union. They don't want any contrary, want to continue to subjugate the workers to their wills and caprices. So that if we say anything that is not theirs, they even have the power to ban the union, to outlaw the union. So we will not wait for this to happen. And let me remind us, this law, a portion of it, these clauses have been in the Civil Aviation Act, I think since 2006. How have they been implemented? A non-enforceable law. It's not a law. It's not a law. Where they are even trying to borrow it from, that is the Trade Dispute Essential Services Act, was a product of the military. It used to be a decree since 1977. So what we got to now import it to today's activities. Are we progressing or progressing? I don't know. We should, even our lawmakers, they should learn.
All right.
They should learn not to continue making mockery of themselves.
All right, thank you so much, Francis.
Try as much as possible to protect our common patrimony.
All right, thank you so much, Francis, for the insight. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak. Unfortunately, we have to end the discussion at this point because of our time. Our guest has been the General Secretary, Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Comrade Francis Akinjole, who joins us virtually from Lagos, and also in the studio, strategist and policy analyst Yusuf Baba. Thank you so much for joining us on
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, with that, we've come to the end of the show. In case you've missed, you can catch up across all our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. and you can also watch us live on YouTube. My name is Ayuba Ilya. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.
Thank you for welcoming us into your homes this morning. Do well to join us same time, same station tomorrow. My name is Stella Yaji. For now, do have a pleasant day.